Welcome to another edition of Dead Air Live, the longest running live TV show in America, and Somerville Connects. We have the amazing Donald Brown, who is an author of The Morphine Dream. Welcome, Donald.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
What a title. I don't know where to begin, but let's start you. You grew up in Somerville, or you lived here for 8 years, correct?
Yes.
Tell us about your time in Somerville.
Well, my children were born here, and my children finished high school here. They lived here for most of their life until they were in their 20s. And, I was gone by then from Somerville, but I came here a lot to my former house, where my ex-wife lived with my girls. And I've maintained some close contacts in Somerville with different political figures in Somerville. Worked on campaigns for Somerville, and always think of it as kind of a second home.
Well, we're glad to have you tonight, but we're here to talk about your book, The Morphine Dream. And I'm going to just read something. You can do anything you set your sights on, one step at a time. Why don't we start from the beginning? Tell us about The Morphine Dream. How did you come up with this title?
Well, when I was in my mid-30s, I was involved in a very bad accident working in a factory. And I was in the hospital over and over again for years, two years out of 5. And one time I was in the hospital and I had a very serious surgery, and they put me on morphine before I even woke up. And I didn't want any drugs, but the morphine caused me to let my mind go and be creative. And after I woke up, I was listening to a motivational speaker, and he said, take out a pad and write down where you want to be in 5 years. And I wrote Harvard Law School. And of course, at that time, I had never been beyond junior high school, and I couldn't walk. Mm-hmm. And so he said, now write the things that you have to do to go there. And I wrote, number 1, get a GED, and I didn't even know what a GED was. But I wrote it down. Right. And then I said, I wrote number 2, go to community college, and I didn't know what community college was. I knew what college was generally, but I didn't know what a community college was. And then the third thing I wrote was KA, kick ass.
Oh, kick ass.
Yeah, and then he finally said, now turn the page and write where you want to be in 10 years. So I wrote Walking USA. And that was amazing because I couldn't walk. And the next morning, and the prognosis was I would never walk again. And the next morning, the doctor came in and he said, how are you doing, big guy? And I said, well, I'm fine. I'm going to go to Harvard Law School and I'm going to walk across the country. And he said to the nurse, I don't know what you're giving him, but don't give him any more. He's delirious. He thinks he's going to Harvard Law School.
But what was interesting was you had 3 or 4 morphine drips because they kept coming in to ask you?
Yes.
Did you said, oh, I need something for the pain. And so
well, they kept coming in and offering morphine because they didn't know I already had it.
Right. So
I got 5 shots of morphine
in
3 hours.
What do you call this? That your brain, something happened to your brain that you were able to see?
In fact,
people
still say to me today, maybe you should take morphine again.
No,
I've never taken it since then. I never used the pain medicine ever since then, because I thought it was dangerous, to be so free with my mind.
That was a gift. That was a gift that was given to you because that was a way that your inner guides could get through to you and tell you what you needed to do. Now, when you woke up and you saw that pad, you knew it was your writing.
Yes.
Were you totally confused, perplexed?
No, I thought it was doable. You know, I thought I could do it. I always thought I could do anything. But,
But you were in the hospital because of your knees.
yeah, well, I was also in the position in life that I was a laborer. I was a factory laborer. And I had the dirtiest job you could ever imagine in the factory.
How old were you when you went into the hospital?
37.
And you also were, should I call you a professional athlete or a semi-professional athlete?
I was a professional athlete for 15 years before that. I played baseball and football. Football for 12 years, baseball for 4.
And you got paid as a professional athlete?
Yes.
That's pretty impressive.
Well, you know, I didn't think it was that impressive.
I think it's impressive.
Especially looking back, that's part of the problem that I had with my injuries, is because I had so many surgeries over my athletic career that I was very fragile. And since that time, you know, I would never allow my sons to play football because it was so bad. So it's glamorous and glorious while it's happening, but then it ends and then you suffer, and you suffer a lot.
This is why the professional athletes make the big money,
Yeah, and
because their bodies get beat up.
It's why you see Rob Gronkowski retiring now at 27 years old, because he's too beat up.
Do you think it's a true statement, when you have your health, you have your wealth? You're
Yes.
an instant millionaire when you
Yes.
have your health?
You know, and I don't have my health because I played high-level athletics for a long time, and I got so many injuries. It's hard to even recount them.
But you were able to walk across America. He walked across America. You're the only human being that I know that's walked across America, and here to tell us about it.
I walked actually 3 times, but the book is only about the first
You
time.
walked 3 times across
Yes.
America?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
40 miles a day. And when you think of walking from here to Worcester every day,
Oh, that's
that's how
insane.
far it is.
Well, no, from here to Worcester is about 40, 50 miles.
Yeah, so that's how much I walked every day.
Right, you did 20 miles in one part of it, then
And
you
20
took a...
miles before lunch and 20 miles after lunch.
But I noticed in the book, you stopped along the way often to have sugary delights.
Yes.
Did that hurt your walk?
No. I you know, when you walk 13 hours a day, you better have a lot of sugary delights and other delights.
Really? Okay.
And you have to drink a lot of liquid, because it comes out of you as fast as it goes in you, and it's how you cool down.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. This is in your book. If you have hope, you can have a dream. If you have a dream, you can make a plan. If you have a plan, you can get to where you want to go. Don't wait. Make it happen. I love that.
That's right. And that's why I wrote the book, to give people the same kind of hope that I felt that I had. And, you know, a lot of people who feel down and out and think they can't do something extraordinary with their lives, that's nonsense. You can do whatever you want to do.
So
Anybody can.
you're a disabled high school dropout that went from a middle-aged Harvard Law graduate walking across the country to raise money for children's charities.
Yes.
It's kind of like, tell us all the stuff in between, because there's so many. By the way, this is the longest book I've ever read. Listening time is 15 hours. 15 hours! I think it's longer than the Bible. You had aspirations as a young boy to walk to Niagara Falls. I mean, who thinks about that?
Well, I used to, the only magazine and the only world knowledge I got when I was young was National Geographic magazine. And I used to see pictures in there of places like Niagara Falls and the Big Sur and so forth, and I wanted to walk to them. And I remember at a very young age hearing somebody sing a song, "Those faraway places with strange sounding names are calling to me."
Can you sing it?
I don't know.
Come on.
I can't sing.
You can do. You walk across America, but you can't sing a song.
No, I can't sing a
You know
song.
what? I'm not buying that. You sure?
But
Just a
anyway,
few bars?
the words are "those faraway places with strange sounding names, far away over the sea. Those faraway places with strange sounding names are calling me."
Beautiful.
And I
Beautiful, Don.
I identified with that when I was rather young, and I wanted to go to all the faraway places I was seeing in the National Geographic. And that was the only way I knew about the outside world, because I grew up in a farm house with no electricity and no running water and so forth.
And no love from your dad.
Yeah.
Oh, I am so sorry.
Yeah, no.
But your
I
mom,
love you was never spoken in
oh
my
my God,
house.
I can't imagine never being told I
Yeah,
love you.
It's a different world, you know.
I'm
Today's
Italian.
a different world.
I'm Italian.
Yeah.
We always tell each other we love each other, but your mother rallied behind you for everything.
My mother was a
Yep.
saint, and she kind of protected me from my father, who was kind of abusive and physically and verbally, and
I'm so sorry.
more so to me than all the other kids. And I have no idea why that was, but that was the way it was.
Your dad had bipolar.
Yes.
He committed suicide.
Yeah. He tried to commit suicide 40 times before he finally did it. And I was 13, and what it meant to me was I became a man overnight. You know, I didn't have a childhood because of my father, and then when he died, I had to become a man overnight. It was work and, you know, contribute to the family and take care of my younger brothers and sisters and so forth. So it was not a pleasant time to be a child in my home, you know. And of course, then when my father died, my older brothers and sisters were already gone, and then, you know, I was kind of the man of the house at 13. And I was 6 foot and 225 pounds when I was 13. So going to school was like playing with little children, you know. I didn't enjoy school at all, and I didn't do anything in school for 3 years or so until I quit, and I went in the service.
And what branch did you go into?
I went in the Marine Corps.
Marines.
And I remember thinking how, you know, the drill instructors are supposedly so bad, but they were nothing compared to my father, so it was really easy.
It was a cakewalk.
It was a cakewalk because, you know, the physical, you know, strain in the military was not as much physical strain as my father put us through. We worked from the time we were 4 years old. 4 years old. Going to work all day in the summertime from dawn till dusk. And, you know, children were meant to work. That's what my father thought. He didn't agree with having a childhood. That was nothing he bought into. You were supposed to work, and that was it. So the girls did the housework and helped my mother, and the boys worked out on the farm and worked with my father on landscaping jobs and so forth. It was a different world.
So give me a little bit of a timeline. You wanted to, let me back up. You became a professional athlete before the industrial accident. You were a professional athlete, correct?
Yes.
What age were you a professional athlete?
I started when I was 18 when I got out of the military.
Okay.
And I continued until I was 36. And then when I was 36, I had to retire from football because I was too old too old to
Right.
play football.
That's right, yeah.
And I started working in a factory because that's the only job I could get.
Right.
I went looking for jobs, and they'd say, "What can you do?" And I'd say, "Well, I was a pretty good football player." And they said, "Yeah, but what can you do?" I couldn't do anything, so I had to work in a factory. And so when I had the dream that I was going to go to Harvard Law School and walk across the country, that was a really strange dream for somebody who'd never done anything in his life.
Yes, and you said that you had a little extra weight in your body, and that had to be a little bit of a deterrent. I know I have extra weight in my body, and just thinking about walking 50 miles is something like, 25 miles, yeah, but 50 miles a day, that's a lot of miles.
Yeah, I started training 40 miles a day when I weighed 325 pounds. And that was, my playing weight, playing football, but I wasn't in shape after 2 years in a wheelchair. So, when I started walking to train to walk across the country, I was walking 40 miles a day at 325 pounds.
How did you go from the wheelchair to walking 50 miles a day?
Well, I had some special experimental surgery when I was a junior at Amherst College, and that helped me to be able to walk again. It took 4 surgeries, 2 on each leg, but by then I was able to walk again, and I started walking 20 miles a day right away as soon as I got out of the wheelchair. And I was walking up the mountain to Belchertown from Amherst and back down the mountain before I would go to school in the daytime. But, I was motivated to because I was out of the wheelchair, and I had always thought about walking across the country since I was a child. And so I was, in my way, getting ready to do it. And when I had the Morphine Dream, of course, I identified Walking USA. It was the way I termed it. When I turned the page and wrote the 10-year goal, I wrote Walking USA. And I didn't just walk straight across the country. I walked zigzag through lots of states.
And you were walking 3 miles per hour. You had a van that you had to purchase that you had a gentleman from Brazil,
Yes.
and his name was Charles.
Yeah.
And you had a language barrier. You gave him tapes to listen to
Yes.
learn the language, but that wasn't going so good.
No, and eventually he had to go back to Brazil, and I had to get a guy from the veterans shelter in Boston.
Oh, I didn't get to that part of the book.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So, and the guy from the veterans shelter was a guy my age who was a retired state police guy and a marathon runner, and so he was perfect to help take care of my legs. And because he didn't have any problem with communicating,
Right.
and he was, he was really good for me after having trouble. I mean, the guy from Brazil who tried to help me, he really tried hard, but it didn't work out too well because I couldn't teach him the things I needed to teach him, like when I was in diabetic trouble. He couldn't understand what I was going through.
But wasn't he someone that took care of people in his soccer team? He knew about medical things?
Yeah, he knew about feet and legs, and he was a big national soccer star in Brazil.
And he did something for your feet.
Yes.
That blows my mind. You have to tell us about that. He came up
kept
with something.
saying to,
with the kernels of corn.
Yeah, I kept having big blisters on my feet. And he would say, "You need maize and second skin." And I didn't know what he was talking about. So I called a guy who spoke Portuguese after a couple of weeks on the road and a couple of weeks of blisters all the time. And I said, so what does he want? And he says, he wants you to buy corn for your shoes.
Right, this is
And,
weird. This
and
is
second
crazy.
skin is nylons
Right.
under your stockings, under your socks. So the corn that you buy is the corn that cows eat. And you put it in your sneakers and you fill them with water.
Crazy.
And overnight they expand. And I've never had a single blister since then. And that was...
So how different is the corn that they give the cows than the corn that we eat?
It's, like 3 or 4 times as big. And it absorbs a lot of water.
And so he puts the corn inside
In
the
the
sneakers,
sneakers.
and he soaks the sneakers in water.
Yes, and my sponsor said, you don't need to put corn in our sneakers. I said, well, you don't know that because nobody's ever walked 40 miles a day in your sneakers. I know it. I know it changed my life because I've never had another blister since
So
that
what did
day.
that do? It expanded the sneaker to give you more room?
Yes, because your feet grow all
Sweat.
day
They
long.
swell.
Well, they grow to be another size.
What size is your foot?
13.
Oh my God!
So,
do you know that Larry Bird's foot is size
Yeah.
14?
I never had any blisters after that. And then I put nylons, like a woman wears under my socks.
And what did that do?
And because blisters are caused by friction.
Did you have to wear like the pantyhose nylon?
No,
How did that
just
work
the
out?
nylons that go up to your ankle.
Did that restrict your blood flow?
No, but when he took those socks, the nylons off the first day, he showed me a spot on the socks that was all irritated. He said, that be blister if you don't have the
Oh, so the
sock
nylon
on
got the blister and not your
instead
foot.
of my foot.
Now, how long did it take for the sneaker to dry out?
A day.
A day.
Yeah, I wore them. I wore them the next day.
That's so amazing.
Yeah, and my
Fascinating.
sponsor was really mad because there was pictures circulating with my sneakers all having corn in them and
This
water.
is great. This is a new plug-in for corn.
Well,
if you can't eat it, put it in your sneakers.
Distance walking is a different thing. I mean, when you walk
see.
10 miles a day, that's one thing. If you walk 20, that's another thing. If you walk 40, that's a big deal. It affects your feet really bad. And if you don't take care of your feet really well, you're not going to be able to walk many days in a row.
What did you weigh starting off your journey before you?
296.
And what were you at the end?
226.
You lost 70 pounds.
Yes. And I ate anything I wanted to eat. But you can't walk 13 hours a day in normal life.
No, you can't. Okay, so tell us about your academic records because you have quite a. You're not your typical person on any level. There's nothing typical about you.
Well, when I had the dream that I was going to go to Harvard Law School, I came home from the hospital and I was just vegging out, sitting in a chair day after day after day. And one day the phone was ringing and, I was in a recliner and I didn't want to get in a wheelchair and go out to the kitchen. That was in the days when the kitchen
The phone was on the
wall.
wall with
and
the
that,
long wire,
and
the
that
tangle.
was all.
Right.
And so I didn't want to answer the phone, but it kept ringing and ringing. So I got in my wheelchair and I rolled out to the kitchen and I answered the phone and they said, this is Mount Wachusett Community College calling to offer you a free course.
Oh,
and I said, no, thank you. I never went to high school, so I'm not interested. And I had a neighbor who used to come to see me every day, and he was a college professor. So he came in that morning. I said, John, I just got a call from a community college offering me a free course. He said, well, hell, you should do that.
Absolutely.
And I said, John, don't you understand, that I never went to high school? I can't do that.
Yeah,
and
they'll
he
take care
was
of
giving
it.
me a hard time, and so I kicked him out of the house. Well, that night he came to take me for an ice cream. And instead of taking me to the usual place, we're traveling down the highway. And I said, John, where are we going? He said, don't worry about it. Humor me.
He was taking you to the college.
He
to the
pulled up in
admissions
front of the college.
Of course
and
he did.
And I said, no, I'm not doing this. And he said, well, you want an ice cream, you better do it.
Right.
So
he
I
bribed
went
you
in
with
and-
food. That's what Italian mothers
So
and
I
fathers
went
do.
in and I was reading all the literature and so forth, and I decided to sign up for 3 courses. So I went to the counter and I said, I'd like to sign up for 3 courses. And the woman said, how will you be paying for this? And I said, well, I don't have any money. And she said, well, let me see what I can do.
Donna.
And she came back a few minutes later and she said, would you be willing to enroll as Donna Brown?
I love this story.
and I
Donna,
said-
not Dawn.
I said,
Donna.
why would I do that?
That's great.
And she said, well, because we can get you some money, because we have money for women going back to school. And I said, well, okay, well, if you can do it, I'll do it.
Right.
And then the next day I went to the bookstore, and the guy said, what is the account name for your account? And I said, Donna Brown. And he looked at me kind of funny. He would probably get fired today if he did that.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, so I wound up in a community college, as a woman for the first semester. And then
So what did the professors call you? Dawn or
No,
Donna?
they called me Don Brown.
Yeah.
And I learned so much there in the first semester. I mean, so much of it stays with me all of my life,
Beautiful.
And
And you got credits even though you were Donna?
yeah, eventually I had to have that credit transferred to my name, which was kind of a problem.
Was that a
but it
little
did.
embarrassing?
No.
Okay.
No, it was fine. It was a way to go.
Right.
And I couldn't go
Sometimes
otherwise.
You got to do what you got to do.
I didn't have any money.
Right.
So,
But boy,
I
your
did
luck
well.
changed.
And, I had some really special moments in that first semester. The first class I was in, I don't remember what the class was, but the professor was obviously an ex-Marine. And he said, Brother Brown, come down to the front. And it was a room with, long rows of, 40 or 50 students in each row all the way up to the back. And so I came down the front and he said, front and center. You sit front and center because people who sit front and center get A's.
Right.
So I sat in front
Right.
and center every class for
I
the
love
rest of
that.
my academic career.
Right.
And then I went to English, and the professor said, tonight you're going to write one paper, 1 page, write about your favorite place in the world. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know how to write. How am I supposed to do this? I don't know anything, and they're not giving
Right.
me any instruction.
Right.
And I didn't know a noun from a verb, from a predicate or whatever. I didn't know any of that stuff. I never did that. And so after about a half an hour, people were going out and handing him their papers, and he was sitting in the corridor, and he would send them home, because they had finished their assignment.
Right.
So I finally went out and I sat down and I said, Professor, I don't know what's going on here because I don't know how to write. I haven't been to school since I was, a little kid. And he said, why didn't you go to school? I said, well, when I was 13, my father committed suicide and blah, blah, blah. We talked, and he said, well, you can go in and write a page. I said, no, I told you I can't write. He said, listen, if you can talk, you can write.
Excuse me, folks. He's saying he can't write. Okay, look at this book. All right? 15 hours of listening time. He says he can't write. Really, this is something else.
But that's something that came afterwards.
But this is something. This is a person that says, I can't.
That professor said to me, if you can talk, you can write.
Oh, you could talk.
And I got it.
Beautiful.
I got it.
Yep.
And he said, what's your favorite place? And I said, Fenway Park. He said, tell me what's special about Fenway Park.
Beautiful.
I said, well, you walk up the ramp and all of a sudden you see all this green. And the grass is greener than green.
Right.
And the fences are all different shades of green and all different heights. And they got one in left field that's 37 feet high. It's called the Green Monster. And then the players come out with their white uniforms with red and blue letters. And it's just a mind-boggling cacophony of color. And then the sound starts. They start playing Take Me Out to the Ball Game. And he said, go write that.
Beautiful.
So I went back to my desk and I wrote it. And I took it out to him. And I handed it to him. And he said, oh, how did you learn to write like this? And I'm looking for his grass, you know. He must be high or something because I don't know how to write. But he decided I did.
That was
so
someone
that
who
was
gave-
very encouraging.
That was someone that gave you the push that you needed to where you are right now.
Yeah, and then later in life, I'm teaching writing in college.
What was his name? The one that
Professor Cronin. He was
Professor Cronin. Okay.
he was a
Professor-
Harvard-educated professor, and he was really good.
And you taught writing at
Yeah.
Harvard?
No, I taught writing at Mass Bay and Mount Ida.
Okay.
And but I did teach writing as a TA at Amherst College in Harvard.
Yes, and I have something written down here. Reading leads to thinking. Thinking leads to writing. That came from you.
Yes.
Tell us how you were chosen and you picked up President Pouncey, becoming Professor Henry's TA.
Henry Steele Talmadge's TA.
Henry's TA in your roles and duties and how it shaped you. Because that's a great story.
Well,
and that's when you were at Amherst, right?
Yeah, I was at Amherst, and the summer between my sophomore year and my junior year,
And by the way, I'm gonna back up. Amherst is not to be confused with UMass Amherst. Amherst is one of the best, or is the best, liberal college,
liberal arts college,
college in the country. So maybe I should back up a little bit. How did you go from Wachusett College to Amherst? Because we kind of skipped that. Then you can talk
Okay.
about President Pouncey.
Yeah, so at Mount Wachusett, after I got those striking things from my first semester,
Right.
by the second year, I had only completed 6 courses, and I figured I was going to be there till I was 936, like Methuselah. so I.
That's funny.
So I went to see the transfer counselor, and I said, look, I need to get out of here relatively soon, so I want to take an overload in courses. I want to take 7 courses instead of 5.
And how old are you at this point? Because you're a
38.
little older. Which
38.
you're a lot older than all the other college students.
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
probably looked at you saying, what are you smoking?
And I wanted to take 7 courses and 6 courses for the next year, so I would graduate. And they said, no, you can't do that. And I said,
Why?
well, you know, I get good grades. I got all A's.
Sure.
And I was in the hospital half the time, and they went and pulled my record, and they looked at it, and they said, okay, you can take 7 and 6. So that year I took 7 courses in the first semester. The second year I was at Mount Wachusett.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the semester, they had a table tent on the table that said if you have a 3.5 cumulative average or above, you can apply for a Boston University trustee scholarship, which would be 2 years of undergrad and 2 years of law school. It would shorten it by 1 year.
Wow.
And it's a free ride to BU. So I found out how to apply for it, and I went to the president of the college and asked him for his recommendation, and he said, well, you have to get recommendations from all your professors before I'm going to recommend you.
Slam dunk for you.
So BU takes 2,000 applications a year, and names 20 scholarship winners out of that, BU Presidential Trustee Scholars.
Mm-hmm.
So a few weeks later, I got that award. It was
Oh my goodness.
It was in the Boston Globe. And then the next day, I went in to see the transfer counselor. There was a note in my box to go see her. And I went to see her, and she said, Donald, do you want to go to BU? I said, not really. she said, well, why did we go through all this work to get you a scholarship?
Because
And
that's
I
what
said,
you were told.
Because I thought I could use it to get into some place more prestigious.
Right.
And she said, well, where would you like to go? And I said, Clark. And she said, that's not more prestigious. I said, but it's closer.
Right.
So that was what I wanted, to go to school closer. And she said, well, Amherst College called here today and wants you to apply. And I had no idea what Amherst College was.
Right.
So I went down the next day, and it was mind-boggling. I was coming from a place where there's one building, and 3,000 or 4,000 people go to school in that one building. And I go down to Amherst, and it's like 100 buildings, and it's only 1,500 students.
Right.
They have a building for every major.
Wow.
Biology, math, computer, English, whatever you.
What was your major?
History and American Studies.
Okay.
And whatever your major is, they have a building for it. And
Wow.
you live in, it's a very wealthy school.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to visit, and I'm seeing all this, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I could go to this place. This is unbelievable. So I went to the campus store, and I bought a jacket, and I bought a ring that I still wear most of the time, an Amherst College ring for the class of '86, because I believed I was going to get in. So then I went to admissions after that, and I had a good interview, and they were very favorable, but they said, well, you have to finish well at your community college to be able to come here. And that's to be seen, what you're going to do to finish. And, at that point I had all A's. And so there was another semester to go. So she said, I don't know. I can't tell you yes or no. She said, where else have you applied? I said, I'm not applying anywhere else. I'm applying here. And she said, well, that's not very smart. And I thought you were smart, but that's not smart. And I said, well, I'm coming here. And if I don't come here this year, I'm coming here next year. I'm coming here.
You had your sights set on this.
Yeah. So it turns out that I finished well at my community college, and when the admissions was sitting as a group, there's 6 people sitting around a table, and you have to get all 6 votes to get in. And I didn't get any vote except the woman who interviewed me.
Right.
And each admissions person is allowed to take one person to trump one person in with no other support.
Okay.
And so she took me.
Oh my goodness! Another stepping stone.
Yeah. And she said, I'll base my reputation on his ability to do Amherst. And the dean of admissions said to her, you are basing your reputation on it.
Oh.
And I read all this as when I was a student there. I went to read my file, so I read it. I read the transcript of it. And so she stood up for me, so I would never, ever drop out, because if I dropped out, it would make her look bad, and I wouldn't do that.
You're a good man. But you were chosen to pick up President Pouncey.
After my first year.
Which is a big deal that someone...
Yeah, I was the college chauffeur.
You were, okay, so you were the college chauffeur, you were selected, and the course of your life changed as well.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Great friend. He became a great friend, and, he agreed. He told me he would write the letter to a law school that would get me in.
Which is huge.
To Harvard.
It's unbelievable.
That was the first day he told me that.
The first day you
And then he
someone.
told me he would get me older student housing for my family, because I lived in a dormitory and my family lived 50 miles away.
He wanted to keep you all together.
Yeah, and he wrote a letter to Henry Steele Commager asking Commager to make me his TA. And so I was his TA, which is a big deal, because if you're Henry Steele Commanger's TA, you get into any law school you want to go to.
It's unbelievable.
Yes, it was.
Wow.
So, and I was his TA for 4 semesters instead of 1, which is the typical. And so I had a great experience. I mean, being Henry Steele Colmage's TA was like being in college all by itself, you know. That was like a separate college degree.
But the day that you graduated, something very special happened. I got tears in my eyes when I heard this on your 15-hour audiobook.
Yeah, they told us before we marched up from the gymnasium to the quadrangle that when you go all the way around the quadrangle and you get back to go through, the faculty standing on each side.
Right.
Sometimes a faculty member who you're particularly close to will stand out to shake your hand or hug you or whatever. And remember that you have a duty to not hold up the line, so get out of that embrace as quick as you can. So when I got to start to go through the faculty, every single person in the faculty hugged me or shook my hand, and I didn't know half of them. But, you know, they still knew that I had gone through there as a much older student. I was the oldest student to ever graduate.
You were the oldest student. You graduated with high honors.
Yes.
And
I was lucky.
and everybody hugged you. But the real excitement is coming. Okay? So now...
So then I got into Yale and Harvard, and I wanted to go to Yale by that time because a lot of students had told me, go anywhere but Harvard. So friends of mine were at Harvard telling me that. So there was a guy at Yale that I wanted to work with because he was a specialist in civil rights. His name was Burke Marshall. He was the Assistant Attorney General to Robert F. Kennedy.
Wow.
So he was teaching at Yale, and I wanted to go to Yale. So I went down to see him. And when I was talking to him about my interests, he said, well, you don't want to come here. You want to go to Harvard and study with Derek Bell. And, you know, I was kind of confused because here's the guy I want to study with. And he said, but I'm retiring. So, you know, you want to go to Harvard. You need to go to Harvard.
And this is also your neck of the woods.
This was like December 14th, and the deadline for applying is December 15th.
Oh, my goodness.
So I went back to Harvard. I went back to Amherst on that morning of December 15th, which is my birthday. And I said to them, they said to me, did you get into Harvard? I said, I didn't apply to Harvard. And he said, no, you got to apply to Harvard because we need the statistics.
Like right now?
Yeah.
And who?
So they did all the work.
And the application ended up in whose hands?
The dean of law school admission.
Which is a fluke.
Yeah.
That you were like at the
No,
very...
I went there to deliver it in hand because it had to be delivered in hand.
Right, and you were in the 11th hour.
And I was at lunch hour, and the only person there was the dean of admissions.
Of all people.
And I gave it to her. And the next morning I got the letter.
That you're in Harvard.
Yeah.
I mean, this is all these events are unheard of.
She said to me when I got there, you know, a few months later, she said, I opened your packet and I read the letter from Peter Pouncey, and as soon as I read the first sentence, I gave you admission
Exactly.
to Harvard Law School. And there was all kinds of people at Amherst applying to Harvard Law School,
and you just
and
get
not
in.
getting in.
You just
And
end
they,
up
and they would say, "How did he get in?" And
Exactly.
I didn't get in.
You're the older guy.
Yeah.
You end up in the right place in the 11th hour. The next morning, you get in.
Yeah.
All these events, but this is where it really gets interesting. When you were going to Harvard, you were working as a taxi cab driver.
Yes.
And if I'm correct, you had to pay how much per week? Is it $65?
No, you pay
Help me out here.
$450 a week to have a cab.
How much?
$450 at that time.
$450 to be a taxi driver.
Yeah,
Like
but
right now,
you
no
make
one-
that by 7 o'clock at night, and then the rest is
$450?
yours. No, in a course of a week. you make the
I see.
450 by 7 o'clock at
Not
night.
anymore, not with Uber
No,
and Lyft.
no. So you take a cab out at 4, and hopefully you pay for it by 8.
Sure.
And then the rest of the shift, 8 till 4 in the morning, is all your money.
But you were in line that you had to wait several hours
Yeah.
to pick up people in the financial district. And these
Yes.
guys were probably drinking. You had to drive them home. They were good tippers. That's when the heyday where everybody was making a ton of money.
Yeah.
But then the Meridian was nearby. And this is where the excitement begins.
Well, the Meridian, when you're in line at the big fancy buildings to take home the lawyers and accountants who live in Sudbury or Westboro or whatever, and it's a big fair. But if you're in line there, if you're top, you get whistled over to the Meridian. So I got whistled over to the Meridian. It was a $2 fare going nowhere.
Right.
And I was aggravated, but I didn't say anything. So I got back in line, and then about an hour later, I'm up top again. And no sooner I get up top than I'm called over to the Meridian again. And this one's going like to one beacon, and her fare's $2. And when she gets out, she said, "How much?" I said, "Don't forget about it." Because
You think your luck is going downhill
yeah,
that night.
Yeah, and
But it really wasn't.
My luck is bad. So then it was a choice of whether I go back there again or not.
So
I
you're a
went-
sucker for punishment. You go back.
Yeah, I went back and I got all the way up to the front again, and then I got whistled over to the Meridian again, and a guy gets in my back seat and says, "I'm going to Ritz-Carlton," and I said, instead of being angry with him, I said to him, "So where are you from?" And he had an accent, Midwest accent, and he said, "Columbus, Ohio." And I said, "Oh, I know somebody from Columbus, Ohio." And he said, "Who?" And I said, "Danny Galbraith."
That was from Wachusett?
No, Danny Galbraith was a multi-billionaire worldwide developer that I met when I was a student at Amherst. They took me
Okay.
to help raise money from him because he was a baseball person.
Oh, I see.
And I
Okay.
was willing to talk to him about giving money to Amherst. So, we had a relationship. We saw each other 3 or 4 times in my senior year. And so I mentioned this name to this guy.
Lewis Mitchell.
Yeah, Lewis Mitchell, who's in my back seat. And he sits there for like 30 seconds and says, "How does a fat Irish Boston cab driver know Danny Galbraith?" I said, "Well, we went to the same school."
Right.
And he says, "Well, what the hell's a fat Irish cab driver, graduate of Amherst College, doing
Driving
in
a cab, right.
I said, "Well, I'm going to law school." He said, "Oh, don't tell me. Harvard?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, pull over and tell me this story."
And you
I
you
said, "You want the
"Oh."
nickel version or the
the long-
quarter?
right.
The quarter version.
Oh my God, I'm sure you. How long did you talk to him for?
I talked to him for about a half an hour. And then he put a
Sure.
$100 bill up on the count.
I'm sure.
On the
He gave you
seat.
$50 tip.
He gave me a $50 tip.
That was nice. Did that
And
make it worth?
$50 to take my wife out to dinner.
Was that worth
beyond
your
that.
while?
Yeah, well, eventually it turned into a job offer, and a big time job offer, and then he said to me, "You need to go get a house for you and your family."
But by the way, this all blows my mind.
Yeah.
The strangers in the back of the car. You find out a person that stops him. He gets quiet. He offers you a job. He ends up buying you a home. You end up getting a job in a bank. Your whole life turned around because you went back that third time for that night standing in line when most people would have given up.
And I was mad when he said, "I'm going to the Ritz-Carlton," but I didn't want to show him I was mad.
Well, that's
So I said, "Where you from?" Just to make conversation.
Right.
And he said, "Columbus, Ohio." Well, I knew Danny was from Columbus.
Right.
So later, when I go to Columbus for Christmas in my third year at Harvard Law School.
Which you had no money to take the flight.
Right.
But he gives you the plane fare.
He
flies
already-
out your wife.
I told him
and
I
your-
couldn't
and your-
afford to go. And
You
he
couldn't
said,
afford
I
anything.
already bought the tickets.
People were just throwing money at you.
Yeah. So I went out to see him. And his office is, his bank is contained in the Danny Galbraith building.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, and he took me to see Danny.
Right. And Danny and you weren't really good friends. You
No,
were
we were
acquaintances.
acquaintances from Amherst College,
Right,
Amherst
right.
College background. But he appreciated the fact that I was an older student at Amherst and that
Sure.
I had a baseball background. He owned the Pittsburgh Pirates at that time.
Danny.
Danny
Oh,
Galbraith.
okay. Yep.
So Lou Mitchell became, very important in our lives, and my second son is named after him.
Nick.
And when my second son was born, it cost like $1 million for his medical care. And, a month or two after he got out of the hospital, I still hadn't got a bill, so I went to the billing department at Children's Hospital.
Right.
And I said, how come I haven't been getting bills? Because I didn't have any health insurance at
Right.
the time. And she said, well, your bills are paid. And I said, what are you talking about? My bills are paid. I didn't pay anything. She said, well, let me check. And she came out and she said, Lewis Mitchell paid your bills.
Oh, my God. What was it between you two?
We were just close friends. And,
Did
my son was named after him, and my son was born terribly handicapped. So he came in town right away, from Ohio, and wanted to, support us, emotional
how
support.
beautiful.
And he paid all the bills.
And it had
Because
to
that's
be.
the kind of guy he was.
Is he still around?
No, he died last year. He's 80. He was 80. And
He gave you the love that your father never gave you.
well, yeah, in a way, yeah.
No, I'm saying he was there to encourage you and support you.
Yes.
So this is as far as I got in your book, your 15-hour book. I'm up to the end of part 3. So we have another few minutes. And I want you to talk to the folks out there about when people, they get discouraged and they don't feel like that they can press on. They lose hope. What do you want to say to those folks? Because we all have our mountains to climb, our hurdles. Everyone goes through the dark night of soul.
I think that, we don't do a good job in education, especially, elementary school and so forth, because we don't teach people that they can do anything. You literally can accomplish anything you set your mind to. All you have to do is focus and set your mind on it. And I've seen it work so many times. I've led people to Amherst College and Harvard Law School many, many times who didn't think they had any shot of going. But you can do anything as long as you work hard. That's all. You have to just work hard. And for example, in this country, we've just been through this scandal about people paying all kinds of money to get their children into colleges that aren't,
Sure,
particularly tough to get into.
celebrities doing whatever
Yeah.
they can.
And all you have to do is work hard. That's all you have to do. Is as a kid, and if you're in junior high school and you go on to high school, keep getting A's. And understand that pretty good is not good enough. You have to be an A student to get your way into college. And if you get all A's and you go out of junior high school and into high school and you get all A's and you take hard courses and you present yourself to the Amherst College or Williams of the world, they'll take you because that's who they're looking for, A students. But, in community college, I heard kids talking on grades day. How'd you do? Oh, I did pretty good. I got all C's. Well, that's not good.
So you're saying that people take the shortcuts
Yes.
and they get lazy.
And they think that pretty good is okay.
No, pretty good is not okay.
No, pretty good is not
You always
okay.
have to be one step ahead.
If you
Better, more creative.
Well, you touched on something that's really key to my perspective. Read, think, and write. reading is the most important activity you can ever participate in. And if you don't read, you're not going to succeed very well. And if you do read, it leads to thinking and it leads to writing.
What about listening? Is listening
Yeah.
okay?
Plus, RTW plus R, respect.
Oh, yeah.
Respect everybody.
Right.
And if you can't respect them, walk away from them. And you, RTW plus R plus you. You can do anything.
I know I can do anything.
No, I don't. I mean you as to
Anybody.
everybody.
Sure.
And that equation equals self-actualization. You can do whatever it is you want to do if you read, think, and write, respect everybody, and understand that you are the most important person in the world, and you can do anything. That's true of everybody.
I love it. Okay, yes! All right, so we're going to wrap it up. Do I have time? Roberto Rosa? Tell me, Roberto. Yes? So, folks, I have to tell you, Donald Brown, we've only gotten through half of the book, and we're going to continue this.
Okay.
We have another hour to go, but not tonight. And I want to thank you so much for coming here to share your experience. I think you have a lot of angels around you.
I do. I'm very blessed, and I know it, and I appreciate it, and I never forgotten it. I never forgotten that. I'm very blessed. It's not because of me. My story is an American story.
Okay.
Because if you're an American, anything's possible.
Did you hear that, folks? Anything is possible.
But
in
if you
America.
live in Honduras or Uzbekistan, I don't know what to say.
We don't have to say anything. Donald Brown, thank you so much. Author of The Morphine Dream. This is to be continued. Bye for now, folks. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Dead Air Live and the Somerville Connects.